Okay, we should be live. Hopefully there's no hiccups getting into this separate Zoom room. It just set up as a webinar so we can share slides. So that's why it was a different link today. So if you're not muted, I'd appreciate you muting yourself, but we're going to make this as conversational as possible using the chat primarily, just so it records our screen for those that couldn't make it live. Just drop in the chat though while we wait for people to pump in. Maybe where you're from. It's mostly members, I would assume, for this, but what area of the city if you're in Winnipeg, and what you're challenged or confused by when it comes to workouts. Love it, Cheryl. Because hopefully I am addressing your questions in the presentation, but if it's something that I haven't addressed in my slides, I'll certainly try to. All right, we got Liz and Lynn Woods. Absolutely, there we go. Cheryl, Mark, welcome. Cam, Cole, Jill, Jackie, and 12 streaming on Facebook. Oops, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see the questions there. So if you're on Facebook, I'd appreciate just jumping over to Zoom, actually, if it's easy for you. I will put that link in there right now, and then we'll get started. Okay. All right, well, that should do it. Okay, let me share my screen. Chat is running. We've got one response, Liz. Way to go. Where else are you guys from? Use the chat and share if there's any challenges or confusion around workouts. I want to be sure that we answer all of it today in the next 30 minutes. So sharing screen. Don't mind my voice, by the way. Just getting over the bug kids passed on to me. So a little hoarse, but we're gonna survive. All right. Perfect. All right. There it is. Charles would represent. I like it, Cheryl. Right, a stone's throw from me. Cam's in River Park South. Excellent. All right, so the agenda, hopefully in the next 30 minutes or less. I don't have too many slides to go through, and I want to make sure we leave a chance to ask questions, etc. So the 3 pillars of perfect workouts, especially as you approach, get north of 40 and well beyond, you don't want to neglect the cardio component, nor the strength, nor the mobility. So we'll go through all 3 of those and how to kind of piece them together. How to set up your schedule and what's realistic for you based off how many sessions you can do. How to program them. Whether you're beginner, intermediate, I consider 2+ years of consistent workouts, advanced 5+ years of barely missing sessions. How much rest periods you should be doing. This is a big one. Some extra bells and whistles that can be helpful, and a lot of you that are in the program are getting programmed. Some of that stuff, and then a bonus opportunity for a few of you. All right, so quick story. This is me doing the wrong workouts. 15 years ago, I had pipe cleaners for biceps, and I still felt like I was skinny fat, and it was largely because I neglected the strength piece, and that's not going to be earth-shattering to any of you, but I like to reiterate this point that you can't really run your way to the optimal physique you're thinking of in your mind. Certainly, I'm all for running if that's something that clears your head and you enjoy doing. That said, we're going to show you the optimal way to get the outcome you likely want with this. And it's largely strength-focused workouts with enough mobility and cardiovascular work in your day to get the full benefit. So now today, less time in my hands, better results. So this speaks to that first myth, is that you've got to have a heart rate monitor on, you've got to sweat your bag off, for lack of a better phrase, to get results, and that's not accurate. Now, some of this stuff can be beneficial, but we don't want to lose strength in the process, and you can only burn so many calories in a half-hour to hour workout. It's the other 23 hours of the day when you're actually burning body fat, and I'll share how that works. I like to share Brett because he had his buddies ask him, well, you must have really worked hard for this transformation, right? And well, his quote was, no, I haven't sweated through my shirt at all through this process. And that's kind of a good takeaway. We don't say this isn't going to work, require some hard work. Whoa, jumping ahead. But smart work, working smarter, not harder. Okay, you don't have to run to get great cardiovascular function. I don't run other than playing hockey, and my VO2 max, I'll show you the results at the end. So some mistakes we find is, in the age of wearables these days, people obsess about how many calories they're burning. And if they're not in a certain heart rate zone, they feel like the workout was for naught. I'm going to dispel a bit of that myth. I like wearables. I think they can be motivating, but they can steer you down the wrong path too. Turning every workout into intervals. Now, there is a way to sequence this and still be time efficient without this bastardized version of just jumping from one exercise to the next, not really focusing on every rep the way it should be. Undervaluing rest days or rest periods.
What's your snack you got?
Oh, sure. We're going to mute someone there. Okay, good. And then not balancing all three, especially as you get older. You're not just trying to be a bodybuilder with huge muscles, I imagine, if you're on this call. So we want to ensure you do maintain strength, really important, but mobility and your heart function as well. All good so far. Any questions, please drop them in the chat. I don't want to make this a one-directional conversation. It gets dull pretty quickly. This is not a university lecture, so feel free to chime in where needed. So this is the piece people seem to think I stand for through my content, is that I'm anti-cardio, but I'm not. I want your heart to function optimally. It just doesn't require the typical cardio you're thinking of to achieve that. Someone's unmuted. Okay, so this is a long list of benefits to conditioning. There's different forms of conditioning. We'll get into in a sec. I won't go into these line by line. Mental health. The more capillaries, the more ability to function or recycle waste products. All good stuff. I don't want to get too deep into that. It's good and important, but conditioning can take many forms. For the vast majority of us, we can walk. So I find that's the best form to start with. Just aiming for a daily step count. You don't have to obsess about how hard the walk is. Even if it's a stroll with a small dog, it still counts. It's about getting more movement into your day in a world where we're very sedentary. So that's step one, is 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day, ideally. You're at 4 now, bump it up to 6, kind of work towards that range. More is probably better to a point, but not so much that there's a real benefit. I need this muting thing, was getting me in trouble. All right, so walking first. Zone 2 is kind of a buzzword these days. Shows a lot of health benefits. It's just that cardio where you can't hold a conversation as long. My daughter's here looking for paper. She's homesick today. She's good. So zone 2 is where you're pushing the envelope a little bit, but you can still kind of get some words out. You can still catch your breath. It's not sprinting full out, where you obviously need to sit down, recover to continue going. It should be something you can do continuous 20 plus minutes at a time. I'll show you some forms of that, but basically you can do that with anything. It depends on how trained you are. Some people can achieve that with a brisk walk. Some may need to get on a bike or treadmill. Metabolic muscle. So this is a way to kind of weave the two together, strength and cardio. And I'll share some examples of that in the templates. And anaerobic abs, more or less the same, but you're working more core this way and conditioning at the same time. And we weave both of those into our client programs. This is a fun way to kill two birds with one stone and optimize time. So you may have heard of the interference effect. You may not have. Don't obsess about it, but there is some real science that suggests pairing cardio with weight training is counterproductive. Like if they're right back to back, if you're doing a hard cardio session before weights or after, you negate some of the benefits of the strength training work. The inflammation you want in the muscle cell gets reduced somewhat. It's just like having an ice bath after workouts can negate some of that benefit. Now, if this is the only way you can get it done, then don't worry too much about it. But ideally, your cardio is a 10-minute warm-up or a 10-minute cool-down, not a hard 30-minute zone 2 plus cardio session. Try to separate the two, assuming you're looking to optimize strength and muscle gain. Okay. I won't talk too much about those yet. So part 2 is, it's a very individualized thing to figure out how much sets, reps, how often to train. So I'm going to kind of help you work through this on your own. Most people will fall into a certain category though. So there is the body part splits. This is the more conventional approach where you do Monday is chest, Tuesdays arms, Wednesdays legs, Thursdays shoulders. It's more old school and it's not as popular these days. However, all three of these will work equally well, assuming like amount of sets and reps are equated across them all. I prefer a push-pull legs, doing less volume on one day so that you're not, with the body part split, that third or fourth exercise, you don't have much left in the tank to really get the best benefit. So splitting it up into 2 sessions a week tends to work better. Most people will fall into 3 times a week with full body sessions, but maybe a lower upper body slant to them. And I'll share how that works in a second here. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was talking about here. If you can only train 3 times a week, great. You can do lots with that. You could split it up this way, where more lower body focused one day, more upper body focused, then full body, or potentially that third workout's focused on a specific area that you're wanting to improve. Trouble spot. So this is a week review of kind of a beginner training template, whereas that's the lower focus day on Monday, upper focus day Wednesday, full body strength on the Friday. And on the non-training days, that's that zone 2 cardio we talked about. That's achievable for most. I like people to kind of break it up with, if they go to a gym, using a few different pieces of equipment, because 10 minutes on a treadmill, a lot easier than trying to get all 30 to 45, 60 minutes in one go. Sorry, in chat. Yeah, we factor in a lot of things, Liz, to set up your plans. So just know it's optimized for where you're at. And everyone's a little bit different, but we're trying to kind of give you general guidelines here, the why behind the how, So I like to do this because it still optimizes for rest periods. I'll talk about in a sec. But it still makes sure the workout is time efficient, where you kind of have these supersets like this, non-competing muscle groups. So legs, this is a chest focused workout or exercise, sorry. And then this is a hamstring focused workout. This is a more of a back workout. So you're not taking a lot of rest periods, but you're using different muscle groups that are fresh, so that when you do come back to 1A, you've had that optimal rest period, which is 1 to 3 minutes. Once you factor in doing this, quick rest after, repeat. So that's why we kind of set them up in this way. They're non-competing supersets: biceps, triceps, back, legs, etc. And then the finisher is something to get some core work. We maybe pair it with squats so that there's a cardio conditioning component. It's more interval focused. We leave that for the last. We don't make the whole workout about that, but there is benefits to that too. Any questions to this point? Feel free to drop in the chat. I'll move on to intermediate. So I don't like blanket recommendations, but at least this gives you an idea of what to expect as time goes on. More or less, this is still the person that can only train 3 times a week, like going to a gym, full workout. So these are still full body training workouts. I forgot the FBT full body training for Friday, but more or less every muscle group's getting hit, 1 or 2 exercises, but you pair them up. That's enough volume over the course of a week. And then on those non-training days, we do 1 interval session. You can really overdo those fairly easily and burn out and feel like crap. But that's just on a stationary bike, 15 seconds, full heart rate capacity, 45 seconds, easy pace. Repeat as many cycles as necessary. Generally, it doesn't take more than 10 minutes. And then zone 2, just for the sake of zone 2. And then assuming your step counts are hit most days, these correctives are just in the case of someone having some injury limitations. So we throw some bird dogs at them, some bear crawls, some stuff that's considered mobility. I'll talk more about that in a sec. All right. Lastly, advanced client, 5+ years. So this is where we do full body training. Again, this is someone that can only do 3 full strength workouts, but we do that metabolic muscle conditioning on Saturday. So that's more interval based. This guy was a former CrossFitter, so we did kind of play into his preferences that way. I wouldn't suggest thrusters, or the ski erg is kind of equipment you can't find everywhere else. But so bear in mind the exercises aren't going to be perfect for you here, but it gives you an idea of how the week looks. Okay, so metabolic muscle would be twice a week. This is intervals again, some zone 2 to finish, and then the intervals 15 seconds on hard, 45-second easy. So a lot more work involved here. I wouldn't suggest this if someone's dieting pretty aggressively. They're more in maintenance or muscle building mode, whereas we can handle a lot more volume and work because we have the capacity for it. So probably want to ignore this schedule unless you're really far along. Okay. So just to review, like these are the things to really look for. And if they're lacking this, you're going to leave some real results on the table. So the real benchmark to toning, building muscle, like those buzzwords, is enough volume working sets per week. And the range is somewhere between 10, 15, 20 sets per muscle group per week, depending on your individual recovery abilities, your level of advancement, and so on. But if you're getting 10 working sets, you're probably getting enough work. That makes sense. So like 10 sets of biceps, whether it be maybe 4 sets of hammer curls, 3 sets of incline curls, and 3 preacher curls, whatever the case may be, right? If you're getting around 10, you're probably programming optimally. And if you're in the program, you know this, we're already hitting that benchmark, and some are beyond that. We kind of based it on time availability, but also how much you can recover from. And there is a point of diminishing returns at a certain level where you're not recovering enough, so you're not building any muscle. You can do too much for sure, especially in the absence of like PEDs. Yeah, Doug. So progressive overload, people can take this one too far. Like you don't necessarily want to beat your logbook every week, adding weight week after week. That's not sustainable for everybody. And I'll share some ways to kind of add intensity in progressive overload without adding weight to the bar in a second. But over time, you want to look back and say 6 months, I was using 40 pounds. Now I'm using 55s. Obviously, that's a good indication that you're getting stronger, you're building muscle. So increasing weight intensity, but intensity can involve a lot of different things. And we don't want form to be compromised in pursuit of that. And that's kind of a fine line, right? You see a lot of that in the gym where people are lifting heavy for the sake of it, but form has gone out the window, increases injury risk. You're getting less bang for your buck from that anyway. And then lastly, we do like that conditioning component. So we'll finish with abs. People like training their abs. We'll sneak in a bit of cardio with that. And you know, you're getting intervals, you're getting your heart rate up. There's benefits to doing that in moderate rate. Yeah, Richard, I think he's on, asked about rest. This was 5, 6, 7 years ago, where they had rest between muscle growth, but no one actually come out in more recent sense. Supersets where you okay, how about now? Hopefully it sounds better. I'm not sure, maybe too many things open. Okay. So just to go back to this slide, in case it wasn't clear, this was the research about 5, 6 years ago showing 3-minute rest periods did way better, double the muscle growth of 1-minute rest periods, but that's not sustainable, right? You don't want to sit in the gym for hours and a half to do that. So what's come out more recently is you can, as long as you're hitting a bit more volume for that same muscle group, you can have less rest periods and still benefit. We've figured out that those supersets with muscle groups that are non-competing, we can get all that rest period of the 3-minute group without sitting around waiting. And you obviously finish your workout a lot quicker. So that's the biceps, then triceps, then back to biceps. That methodology, which I'm sure you've seen me use a lot, is to optimize for muscle growth without, extending your workouts too long. So that's where we figured out the sweet spot. Okay, Jill has a question about 4 sets rather than 3. Well, over time, you want to periodize your workouts. Whereas if you've been doing 3 sets for a long time, maybe you've adapted to that, and adding just the 4th set can be enough to get that progressive overload without increasing weight. And you had a question. Yeah, so those are the working sets. So we like to think there's a warm-up set. When it's programmed for 4 sets, there's a warm-up set, and then 3 working sets. So you base how the weight progresses on how you do that first round. If the weight you've chosen for that first set is really difficult near the end, I would not try to increase it for set 2, obviously, right? So a bit of like listening to your own biofeedback on that, and having good quality sets with sufficient weight. So no hard rules on that necessarily, but you just want those 3 sets to feel hard. Be considered working sets. Okay. So we touched on the metabolic muscle. That's more circuit-based. Like if you're on our classes Tuesday and Saturday, that's largely would fit into that category, where you're not getting a lot of rest. You're jumping from exercise to exercise, but still using enough weight to feel that burn, right? Mobility, we didn't go into too in depth. Kind of depends on the person, but we definitely want to counteract all the sitting we have to do in our lives with, hip mobility, lower back, all that stuff is really something we try to program for you, and we certainly set up workouts that you've probably seen it, where quick sit and stretch, it's called. So just get up from your desk, do these 5 exercises, you'll feel better for it. You'll obviously have less aches and pains, less limitations for your workouts. And this was just to answer Doug's question earlier, where if we can't increase weight, what can we do to increase the intensity, still get progressive overload? Things like drop sets, where you either drop the degree of difficulty of the exercise, say from an incline press to a flat press, or you drop the weight slightly, but you go right into it. So maybe you do 15 reps the first time, you drop the weight, do 12 with the lighter weight, 8 with even a lighter weight, call it a set. And rest pause. I don't need to get too in depth on these, but it's where you go to max effort and then give yourself 10, 15 seconds, pick up the same weight, as many reps as possible. You're going to have quite a bit less on that second set. All right. So I think to kind of summarize this, 3 most important things is to ensure we are conditioning the heart and toning, increasing strength, because both play a major role in your health. The key is to kind of not bounce around from every random training program, because it's hard to measure progress. Just pulling up random workouts from YouTube, sure, you'll get a workout, but is there any way for you to track and progress sufficiently? I would argue no. You want to actually do somewhat the same workouts for at least 3-4 weeks. Look back at what you did on certain exercises and try to beat that, so to speak, as you go forward. That's a good sign of progress. So sticking to it, being consistent. The old cliche, you've been around the block, it's all about consistency compounding. Why does this matter? Well, more and more science is coming out with VO2 max and grip strength being linked to living longer quality lives, right? I mean, I got these tests done back in August on grip strength, VO2 max. I don't run, and yet my VO2 max, 54, what is that? Superior, whatever superior sounds really good, sounds promising. So you can achieve this with just strength training, walking. That's largely what I do, and building muscle, and this will put you into an optimal place without having to spend hours and hours doing exercise. We want to optimize for efficiency first and foremost. You all have busy lives. So short answer is follow the plan, build strength, be consistent, and you'll get these benefits by default, for sure. Any questions? There was lots that came through as we went through. Hopefully I didn't miss any. All good? Who's got any feedback on this? Anything that came up? something that might work for them, feel free. Yes, no, maybe so. I see some hands typing. Yeah, Liz says, is walking enough cardio? It depends on the person. If you're fairly untrained, you've been largely on the couch for the last year, walking is going to kick your butt. Walking is going to be excellent for you, right? But someone in your stage, Liz, walking is good, but probably not the full complement of cardio for yourself, right? We're going to want you to do some finishers on your workouts to kind of push that heart rate up a bit, get some zone 2 in and beyond, right? Because you're certainly capable of it. So that would be a question that's individualized with an answer that's it depends. But in your case in particular, you definitely want to do more than just that. Yeah. I've got a random check mark on there. Yeah, you're already getting that list for the most part, especially if you jump in or do the odd replay of the classes. Zone 2 you tend to do if you're walking on a steep incline or jogging. I would just mix in some of your walking to forms of cardio where you're pushing a little bit harder. Not max effort, but incline walk versus flat, right? That would help. Okay, perfect. Okay, so for those who aren't already in the program, or if you're in the program, certainly you can book in a follow-up call. But for those who are on who may be confused by this, happy to have a chat with you at workwithmitch.ca. I'll put that in the chat here. And we'll kind of map out more of a game plan for you specifically based off what we've done here. And for the first 3 that book a call, we put this package together as well. A macro and portion guide. It gives you kind of a sense of what your meals should look like, how much calories you should be at, what your workouts should look like. All right. All good, guys? I don't know, my video always chops out at about the 20-minute mark. Some sort of flaw in the system. But hopefully this was helpful. Yeah, you're good at 2, Irene. I would say that's perfect. So when it gets easy is when we make it harder for you. So you let us know when you're starting to not feel as challenged by it. That's usually a sign that we can push the envelope in some ways. All right. We'll leave it there then, right at the top of the, what are we, 12:28 with 2 minutes to spare. So any questions that came up from this, maybe that you don't want to ask in a public forum, feel free to shoot me a message wherever we're connected, and I'm happy to answer it there. We'll get this replay out to you shortly. Mini bikes. What do you mean by mini bike? Is that stationary bike? Maybe I should know what a mini bike is, or I'm out of the loop. But I don't know what that is. But I would suggest any form of cardio that gets the intended effect. And what we spoke about was the different zones, heart rate zones. They all have a benefit. If you're biking, I would say you're doing well. It's better than sitting, right? So any form of cardio can work. All right, we'll leave it there. You have a good rest of your week, guys. Those in the program, tomorrow is Mindset Call. Friday is open Q&A with a cool topic on genetic testing. So watch for that. We'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.